It's time for City Beat, your source for all the latest news on the city of Thompson. Only on 102.9 CHTM, your radio station.
Good morning and welcome to City Beat. My guest is Mayor Dennis Fenske. He's going to give us an update on what's been going on in the city and what's coming up. And this is just a reminder to listeners that you can call in with questions to 677-8181 or email us ahead of time at CHTMnews@arcticradio.ca. And welcome again, Dennis.
Good morning.
So lots of things went on this week in Thompson and at City Council, so there's lots to talk about.
Absolutely.
Lots to talk about. So maybe you just want to do a recap of what happened in the past week?
Well, I think the biggest news is that as of Wednesday, after we at Council dealt with the resolution on Monday and the school district dealt with the resolution on Tuesday, that we have been awarded the Manitoba Winter Games, Power Smart Winter Games for 2018. That'll happen in March. It means 1,400 athletes coming to our community with coaches, managers, referees, officials, and family and friends. You're probably looking at around 3,000 people over a course of 8 days. So a huge impact to our community, great positive move, and we're really excited for that.
And it's going to really be good for generating a lot of economic prosperity for our community.
Absolutely. We just had a chance to look at the numbers from Steinbach. They hosted the Summer Games, and so although they're closer to Winnipeg, they will probably have a lot more in and outs, whereas in Thompson we'll have people come and stay for the duration, and so our numbers should be a little bit higher from that perspective.
Yeah, lots of hotel nights, lots of meals.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And so what is the next part of the process? Who's going to take the lead on this? Is this going to be the City Rec Department, or are you looking for volunteers?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. Right now, we're just securing the local Games Council, and we should have that filled out in the next week or so. From that, we'll branch out into the subcategories of the directors for the Games Council, and then the individual sport chairs will come from the individual sport bodies themselves. So the actual call for volunteers for day-to-day shifts probably won't happen until Leisure Op weekend in September, where people will be able to sign up with that. In the meantime, we'll get the organization in place, ready for the first field trip by Sport Manitoba and the sport governing bodies, which will probably be the end of May, first part of June, coming up to Thompson just to see how we're making out.
All right, that's excellent. The city also passed their accessibility plan. So tell us about that, what it is.
Yes, this is actually following legislation that was provided by the province of Manitoba. We did an internal inventory on our accessibility to all buildings owned and operated by the city of Thompson. So we've got some recommendations. We discussed it at budget last night in regards to taking proactive steps to ensure that our buildings are accessible, and it'll be a long-term project in the sense that we have some older buildings that will need some larger work, and we have some newer buildings that are already compatible, or we just have some minor fixes to do. So it'll be an ongoing process, but it's a positive move to ensure accessibility to all city-owned facilities.
Okay, and how is it going to affect the city making some of those decisions coming forward? Is it going to be changing any of the, I'm imagining building codes, that kind of thing?
Well, I think the legislation comes from the province of Manitoba. We'll adopt the legislation within our own local building codes and development agreements. So that'll be sort of folded in, but basically the province supersedes anything that we put in, and that's the higher standard. And so we'll just follow those directions.
Okay, and it wasn't all just having to do with facilities and the physical, buildings and stuff themselves. It also had to do with, say for example, service animals and
Correct.
People who are helping people with disabilities.
Yeah, so that's a good example. Service animals, again, making people aware of where they're allowed and pretty much anywhere. So that may be a learning curve for some. Others, for hearing impaired, for example, there's technology in places where if you went into, for instance, the VRCC, and we were up to speed with the technology. We aren't right now, but when we do, if you had a hearing aid, when you could come into the building, you could automatically tune it to the building itself, and that would allow any announcements that are being made. It would allow you to tap into that facility.
Okay, excellent. And so Thompson 2020.
Yes.
So you were at Chamber of Commerce yesterday and talking about Thompson 2020, and I know it's involved, and it's going to be a pretty involved prospect from start to finish, because it probably won't really have a finish. It's going to be an ongoing endeavor. So can you briefly give us an idea of what Thompson 2020 is and who's involved with the initiative?
Okay, so basically it spawned out of the announcement from Vale that they're going to a mine mill operation in 2018, mid-2018, and so this is a group. I guess the administrative part of it is getting the province on board in assisting with the economic impact or mitigating the economic impact for the city of Thompson. And so from our perspective, it came from an initiative out of Vale to deal with the employees that may be affected or will be affected. So involved at this point in time are Mark Scott and Ryan Land from Vale, myself and Gary Sepatelli from the city of Thompson, Tim Johnson from North Central Development, Ozzy Oswald from Community Economic Development Fund, and Jackie Lajimodi from the province of Manitoba. And so we'll be working with the province in securing some assistance funds and setting priorities in mitigating the impact. There is an ad out already for a project manager on a contract basis for 18 to 24 months. The city of Thompson, in addition to that, will be hiring an economic development officer who will mentor under the project manager and will remain a city employee after this process is done. There's three basic buckets of work. The first bucket of work talks to the immediate impact of Vale employees. The second bucket of work talks about retirees, not only Vale, but any other person that's retiring in our community and what we can do to retain retirees in our community. And the third bucket of work is business growth, existing and new business. And so our economic development officer will be working closely with that group, the Chamber of Commerce and others, and basically, there will be organizations and people of that profession or talent to work in each of the buckets of work as we identify works and potential programs that can assist in mitigating all of the effects from the employee to the businesses to the local resident.
Okay. And so how is this going to be different from other like economic development groups that have been in the city in the past? Like we've had Thompson Unlimited, we've had, TEDWIG, which is the Thompson Economic Diversification Working Group that was identifying. So how will that be different?
Well, I think this one is more focused directly on the announcement of Vale going to a mine mill operation in 2018. So there is, for instance, the bucket one work basically has an 18-month lifespan, is that by mid-August of 2018, the effects will be felt by all those. So that planning is in place now, and some programs or projects are starting to take shape to help mitigate those instances. An example would be possibly a change in careers for those affected. Right now, there are highly skilled, well-trained people in positions that no longer will be there. That doesn't mean that they couldn't be cross-trained into another position in our community with another business. For instance, there's always a shortage of Class 1 truck drivers in our community, and so if someone wanted to transition from a process operator at the refinery to a Class 1 truck driver, there are opportunities, or will be opportunities, to make that changeover, which would mean a change in career, but also retain them in Thompson, which is the ultimate goal, is to retain as many people in Thompson as possible, because as I mentioned at the Chamber of Commerce, the census is very important in regards to transfer funds from the federal government and the provincial government. We're currently at 13,123, so any person less than that costs the ratepayers of Thompson money in transfer funds.
Okay, exactly. We want to keep more people here.
Absolutely.
And another thing, at the city council meeting, there was some discussion about the city's procurement policy.
Yes.
So maybe just clarify what the policy is, and especially if there is a situation when one vendor responds to a tender?
Right. So we do have a procurement policy in place, and we're governed by the Municipal Act and the laws that we have to follow. So we have that procurement policy in place. In regards to tenders, we have to tender everything with the exception of if we have to sole source, then there's council approval there's a process that go through to sole source. In the event of tendering and there's only one respondent to that tender, legally we have to go through the tender process. We can't just say, okay, well, we only got one, we're going to cancel it and retender it. That's against the law. If there's a tender and we receive one applicant to that tender and it meets all the criteria, we'd have to have pretty good reason not to award that tender, because legally we would be liable for that tender. So there is a process in place. The discussion at council that evening, in particular to a certain contract, all those processes were followed, and the thought of from some councillors that we could just cancel it and retender it, no, that's not the case. That would be breaking the law.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So we're getting ready into another weekend here. Is there anything else that we should be aware of that's coming up?
This weekend, just basically from a weather perspective, we've seen a drastic change in weather from 51 below last Tuesday to +1 yesterday. I noticed the roads are a little bit slippery, sidewalks are a little bit slippery, so just be cautious in that from that perspective. There is a workshop tonight in regards to fentanyl. It's been in the news across Canada. It is in Manitoba. It is in Thompson. And so for anyone interested in wanting to know about the effects of fentanyl and what can be done to prevent it or prevent the consumption or be aware of that, there is a workshop available this evening, and we encourage everyone to come out.
Yeah, and that's at 7 o'clock at the Leckman Theatre. And just to let everybody know, it's free of charge, and you're going to get, and there's an expert panel that will be there to answer questions. So you're going to have a great opportunity to get informed.
Yep, knowledge is a great thing.
Exactly. All right, well, thank you very much, Dennis, and we'll see you again next week.
Absolutely.
And thank you to everybody who's listening. And this has been City Beat for 102.9 CHTM. I'm Sue O'Brien.
City Beat will be back next Thursday morning.